My parents chose my sister's birthday party over my son's funeral, posting photos while we were saying goodbye to him, and now they're shocked that the world sees them as monsters. My 8-month-old son died a few weeks ago from complications related to pneumonia, and my parents decided to attend my sister's 30th birthday party instead of his funeral. My wife and I live about an hour away from my parents, who are retired. My sister, Katie, lives in the same city as them. Katie has always been the center of attention. This has been a pattern for years, but I won't bore you with the details. The difference became even clearer when my wife got pregnant. My parents' reaction was lukewarm at best. My dad said it was good news, but my mom immediately started talking about how Katie might want kids someday too. My wife's parents, on the other hand, were thrilled. They started buying baby clothes right away and visited every weekend to help set up the nursery. When our son, Marcus, was born, the contrast was even starker. My wife's parents arrived at the hospital within an hour. My parents showed up the next day for about 30 minutes, rushing off to their book club. Over the next 8 months, my wife's parents visited twice a week, bringing groceries and helping with chores. My parents visited maybe 6 times total, usually when it suited their schedule. I sent them photos of Marcus, but my mom would reply with a thumbs-up emoji, and my dad rarely responded. Meanwhile, every photo Katie posted on social media got long comments from both parents about how beautiful or funny she was. 3 months ago, Katie announced she was planning a big 30th birthday party, a weekend celebration with all her friends at a rented venue. My parents jumped in to help plan it immediately, constantly talking about how special it would be. At the same time, my wife and I were planning Marcus's baptism. We chose a date that happened to fall on the same weekend as Katie's party, unaware of the conflict. When I told my parents about the baptism, my mom immediately brought up Katie's party. I suggested they could attend the baptism in the morning and the party in the afternoon, as there was enough time to travel between cities. They didn't think it was feasible. 3 weeks ago, Marcus developed what seemed like a common cold. My wife and I weren't too worried. Babies get sick often, but his condition worsened over the weekend. By Monday, he was struggling to breathe, and we took him to the hospital. The doctors said he had pneumonia, which had progressed rapidly. We spent 3 days in the hospital. My wife barely left Marcus's side, and I slept in the chair next to his bed. My wife's parents took turns staying with us, bringing food and clean clothes. I called my parents on the first day to tell them what was happening. My mom said they'd try to visit soon, but they never came. On Wednesday night, Marcus's condition deteriorated rapidly. Despite the doctor's efforts, he passed away early Thursday morning. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and arrangements. My wife could barely function, so I handled most of it with help from her parents. I called my parents Thursday afternoon to tell them Marcus had died. My mom's response was brief. She said she was sorry for our loss and asked about funeral arrangements. I told her we were planning the service for Saturday morning at our church. There was a pause. Then she said Saturday was Katie's birthday party. I asked if she was suggesting they couldn't attend their grandson's funeral because of a birthday party. My mom said they understood it was difficult, but they'd already committed to organizing Katie's party. My dad got on the phone and said they paid deposits for the venue and couldn't cancel on short notice. I hung up without another word. Friday night, my parents called. My mom immediately started talking about how stressed they were with the party preparations. She said they felt terrible about missing the funeral, but hoped we'd understand that canceling would disappoint a lot of people. I hung up again. The funeral was Saturday morning. My wife's entire family was there, along with our friends, my colleagues, and even some relatives from my side. The church was full of people who wanted to support us, which brought some comfort despite everything. My parents' absence was glaring, especially since they were the only grandparents not there. During the service, I saw Katie's Instagram stories from her party, photos of my parents helping set up decorations. After the burial, several people asked where my parents were. I was completely honest, telling everyone where they were and what they were doing. The following week, my parents didn't call or visit. My wife and I were barely functioning. She took leave from work, and I used my bereavement days. My wife's parents visited daily. On Friday, nearly a week after the funeral, my mom called. She didn't ask how we were or mention Marcus. Instead, she wanted to invite us to dinner on Sunday so Katie could show us photos from her party. She said it would do us good to get out of the house and be with family. I told her we weren't interested in seeing party photos. She said life had to go on, that Katie had gotten wonderful gifts, and the party was a huge success. Then she asked if we could bring a dessert to the dinner, as my wife's cakes always impressed everyone. I hung up again that I can't stop thinking about Marcus and how little my parents seemed to care, if they cared at all. They missed most of his short life, and now his funeral too. My wife's parents have been our only family support through this nightmare. I don't know if I can ever forgive my parents for this. Missing their grandson's funeral for a birthday party feels unforgivable. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who's shown more compassion for what my wife and I are going through than my own parents. This is an incredibly hard time, but your support has been comforting. About a week after my initial post, my Aunt Patricia, my mom's sister, called me. She lives out of state and said she'd reached out to my parents to offer condolences for Marcus, but the conversation felt odd. I told her the truth about what happened. She gave her condolences again. She'd already called when this all happened, and said she'd call back later. When she did, she was furious. She confronted my mom, who admitted they chose Katie's party over the funeral. Patricia said she immediately called other family members, including my dad's brother and several others who hadn't attended because they live far away. She wanted them to know the truth, as what my parents did was unforgivable. My dad's brother called them and said he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Everyone has reached out to us, saying they support us and have cut off my parents until they at least apologized at why Mom called me crying. She said the extended family was treating them like outcasts, and it was painful to be seen this way. She tried to give more excuses for their decision, saying it seemed reasonable at the time. When she finished, I asked if she realized Marcus was their grandson and that they'd never see him or have a chance to say goodbye. She said of course she knew, but he was just a baby who wouldn't have noticed if they were there or not. I couldn't even respond to that callousness. I hung up and blocked them. 3 days later, Katie called me directly for the first time. She said she was tired of the family drama and wanted to resolve things. She suggested we meet to talk and find a solution. I asked what she thought there was to discuss. She said she understood my wife and I were grieving, but we were being unfair to our parents. She also said Marcus's death was tragic, but we shouldn't use it as an excuse to punish people just trying to live their lives. Katie went on to say she'd been looking forward to her 30th birthday for a long time, and our parents were essential to making it special. If they'd canceled at the last minute, it would have ruined everything she'd planned. She asked me to consider how selfish it was to expect them to abandon her celebration. I asked if she thought her birthday party was more important than her nephew's funeral. She said that wasn't a fair question because they were two completely different events. Funerals are for the living to find closure, she said, and our parents could have a private moment to remember Marcus without attending the formal service. Katie genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong. She saw it as a scheduling conflict resolved in the most practical way. I ended the call by telling her I never wanted to hear from her again. Later that day, she texted me, saying she was disappointed in how we were handling this. Meanwhile, my wife's parents have been our main support system. The contrast between our families is night and day. I think without them, my wife would have fallen apart by now. I keep wondering what my life would have been like if I'd been born into my wife's family instead of mine. My aunt called again yesterday to say my parents had asked her to mediate a family meeting, but she told them there was nothing to resolve. Update 2. I need to share what's happened in the last few weeks because my parents have somehow managed to get even worse. About 2 weeks after my last update, I got a call from my workplace. My boss said my mom had contacted the school, asking if I was fit to return to work. She told the office staff I was having a crisis after a family tragedy. My boss assured me she handled the call professionally and that my job was secure. She said my mom asked inappropriate questions about my sick leave and whether the school offered mental health resources. My boss told her employee information was confidential and that if she had concerns, she should talk to me directly. Not only did my mom overstep by calling my workplace, but she also implied I was mentally unstable. I later learned she'd made similar calls to my wife's workplace. My wife's boss was less diplomatic and told my mom she could call hell. This led me to call my mom and tell her to stop. She said she was worried about us and, since we weren't answering her calls because she was blocked, she wanted to ensure we were getting the help we needed. I asked what kind of help she thought we needed. She said she was concerned we were making bad decisions while grieving and might do something to harm our careers or future. She'd been talking to Katie, and they both agreed we were handling Marcus's death in an unhealthy way. She said she understood we were sad about losing Marcus, but we were letting grief control our lives. Successful people, she said, learn to compartmentalize emotions and function normally even in tough times. She cited other family members who'd faced losses and didn't let it affect their relationships or work. I asked if she considered missing their grandson's funeral an example of healthy compartmentalization. She said that was different because they'd made a commitment to Katie, and keeping commitments is a sign of good character. While Marcus's death was tragic, it didn't change the fact that other people's celebrations and lives mattered. 2.2 days later, Katie showed up at our house. My wife answered the door because I was at work, and Katie barged in without permission, carrying a gift bag with leftovers from her party, decorations and photos from the celebration. She told my wife she thought we might want to see how beautiful the party was and that it might help with our grief. My wife called me at work, and I came home immediately. When I arrived, Katie was sitting on our couch, scrolling through her phone, showing my wife more party photos and videos. I told Katie to leave, but she said she wasn't done explaining why the party was so important. I said I didn't care about her party and to leave my wife alone. Then Katie said her celebration was more important than my wife's trauma because she'd made it to 30, while my baby didn't even reach a year, so we couldn't miss him that much. My wife, who'd been grieving in a near trance, snapped. She grabbed Katie by the hair and started dragging her across the room. I had to stop it because I didn't know what the consequences might be if I let it continue, though Katie certainly deserved it. She left, threatening to sue my wife for assault but saying she'd be gracious and not do it because of our grief, as long as we apologized. Holding my wife, I told Katie that if she didn't leave immediately, I'd let my wife go again, and she'd have to test her survival skills. She left quickly. My wife threw the gift bag straight into the trash. The next day, my mom called because I'd forgotten to reblock her. She was angry that I'd let my wife attack Katie, saying Katie was just trying to be kind and didn't deserve it. I told her to go to hell and that I wouldn't attend her funeral either. She's blocked for good now, and my wife and I have decided to change our phone numbers. At least my wife has started to come out of her trance-like grief. We're working with a therapist specializing in grief and family trauma, which has been a huge help for her, and for me too, because even though I seem stronger, this has hit me hard. No parent should have to go through losing a child, and handling it isn't simple. Update 3. My parents made one last attempt to contact us. They drove to our house and waited in the driveway for 3 hours until I got home from work. I was furious seeing their car. These people have been callous and can't even respect our grief by staying away and not adding more stress. My dad did most of the talking. He said they'd been thinking about the situation and wanted to apologize because they finally realized they'd made the wrong choice by attending Katie's party instead of Marcus's funeral. They regretted hurting us and wanted to find a way to repair the relationship. I asked, if you had to make the same decision again, what would you do differently? He said they'd try to find a way to attend both events. Maybe leave the funeral early or arrive late to the party. That answer told me everything I needed to know. Even after months of family conflict and rejection from extended family, they still think a birthday party holds any weight compared to their grandson's funeral. Their priorities are so warped that, despite everyone telling them they were wrong, they still can't see it. Mom stayed quiet for most of the conversation, but when my dad finished, she said she hoped we could move past this and focus on repairing our relationship because our bond was important to them, and they wanted to find a middle ground. She said holding on to anger wasn't healthy, and that Marcus would want us to forgive and move forward. I told them not to mention Marcus's name and that using their dead grandson was low even for them. My mom started crying, saying I was misunderstanding their intentions. They weren't using Marcus's memory, just showing they shared our pain and thought about him often. I told them not to think about him, that it was an insult to his memory. We don't share the same pain. I'm grieving the loss of my son, while they'd probably be more worried about paperwork than my death if I died. All they care about is how the world sees them now, as narcissistic parents and grandparents with the emotional depth of a rock. My mom sobbed, telling my dad how unfairly I was treating them, while he consoled her and tried to get her back to the car. I haven't heard from them since, and I don't expect to. I can't believe they had the audacity to see themselves as victims, that it's just them and Katie now, the only ones who can see themselves as victims in this. Even people who attended Katie's party, strangers who didn't know about my son, haven't defended their actions. It's like my parents expect my forgiveness to make the world stop judging them. But they won't get it. I'd rather they go back to how they've always been, ignoring my life, my son's life, and living in their bubble of favoritism toward Katie. But because it hurts them to be seen as the bad guys, they're being even more callous for their own selfish reasons to least my wife, and I have started talking about the possibility of having another child someday, not as a replacement for Marcus, but as an expansion of our family. We're not ready to make that decision yet, but we're no longer avoiding the conversation, which is progress. We don't want to be trapped in this pain forever, letting it define us or tear us apart. It's still early, but we're working through it. Does it hurt like hell? Absolutely. But knowing there are people like you, my wife's family, my extended family, minus my parents and sister, and even Katie's friends offering support is healing. In a world where the pain of losing a child exists, it's comforting to know there are people unlike my parents, people with decency and values. This reflection gives me hope and strength to keep going with my life, my marriage, and my dream of growing our family. Just some thoughts. Update 4. Last week, over 3 years after my last post, we got the news that my wife is pregnant again. We've been trying for a few months after healing enough to seriously consider it again. It wasn't an easy journey to get here. It took a lot to revisit our original plan of having at least 3 kids, but here we are. And no, we won't bother telling my parents or Katie. I know they wouldn't care anyway, though you're probably wondering what's happened with my parents in that time. Our relationship is completely over. There was no way to repair anything after our last interaction. They've become recluses because people despise what they did, especially after learning about the things they said and did beyond missing the funeral. We've never hidden anything and have always been honest with anyone who asked. My parents used to have an active social life, dinners with friends, gatherings, golf. Since this started, they've been ostracized. I still get messages from strangers or acquaintances saying they can't believe what my parents did and offering condolences. Something similar has happened with Katie. She hasn't celebrated a single birthday since, or at least hasn't posted about it. The photos from her 30th birthday party are gone. She also moved away a couple of years ago because this affected her job. That's honestly a relief for us. My parents no longer have a reputation to protect, so they leave us alone, and Katie's no longer an hour away to show up at our house with her nonsense. Everything has fallen where it belongs.